Good afternoon and welcome back to the ASUG News Studio. My name is Tom Whalegum, Editorial Director of ASUGnews.com. Delighted to have Timo Elliott here from SAP. He is a technology evangelist, he would say, but he's also a senior marketing executive with SAP BusinessObjects, I should say. Thank you for being here and flying in.
Thank you.
So, among other duties here, Timo is going to be giving a presentation which involves BI architectures, and I thought that was an interesting term. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that first and dive into some more of the BI things, cool things that SAP is doing. But so BI architectures, what does that mean to you?
So the presentation is about how the last 10 years of best practice BI architectures, all of the different systems you need to put in place to get business data in the hands of business people. Okay. Those technical infrastructures are rapidly becoming obsolete. There are brand new technologies that are forcing us to rethink how we do everything.
They're becoming obsolete. Why is that?
Well, today we know how to do business intelligence well from a corporate point of view. We have to get some information from the underlying systems, make a copy of it, store it in a data warehouse, optimize the data warehouse, do some querying and reporting, get those out to the business users. Okay. So we can do all that. The problem is it's painful, complex, expensive, and slow today. We know how to do BI, but it takes us a while, and the business people often end up turning to their own tools or Excel. Guessing, which is even worse. But what's changing is things like in-memory, column stores, in-database analytics, massively parallel architectures. These things are coming together to create a real revolution.
Do you think, too, because for so many years there was the disconnect between IT and the users, and now that analytics, that there's more familiarity, with the newer analytics today are easier to consume, let's just say that.
Right.
And yet there's this, as you just mentioned, there's this tremendous plumbing IT work that's got to be done. But users don't care about that, right? They don't want to hear about that.
And they care even less than they used to. This has actually been fascinating for me. Is when I started in this industry 20 years ago, you get a certain number of people that would complain they didn't have access to enough business information. Sure. 20 years later, the same surveys show business people just as dissatisfied with their information systems as they were 2 decades ago. So at one level, that sounds very depressing. Have we done nothing to improve anything? But the reality is, one, of course, the technology is vastly improved. We can do incredibly more powerful, complex things. But the world has also moved on, and that users' expectations have moved up, if anything, even faster. Yep. So for those of us implementing business intelligence solution, it's a little bit like walking up the down escalator. So we have to scramble just to stay still. Yep. And what we'd really like is a big leap forward, to be able to really get a jump start on some of these technologies and get closer to what users expect now that there's the consumerization of IT. How easy they expect it to be has gone way up.
Right.
So we need to change things.
Well, you also then could throw in not only the technology infrastructure, but the massive amounts of data. I know big data is an issue that's on SAP's radar. So how is this world going to all be pulled together when we've got some difficult IT infrastructure challenge, but not insurmountable, and then we've got big data growing every day, and then we've got user expectations? Seems like that's tough. I know that.
Yeah,
probably
that's the theme of the presentation, right, on Wednesday morning, 8 a.m.
Yeah.
But yeah, for now we'll talk about how these things come together. But the new technologies, notably architectures like HANA, in-memory column stores, it turns out that these are great architectures for analytics that we've already heard about. But it's also great for the new wave of analytics that people want. So unstructured information, it turns out that you can store very well in column stores. Or you want to share information more socially, things like social network analysis. That gets very difficult unless you have an in-memory data store. Yeah. So my presentation is really about how these technologies coming together really holds out new promise.
What about kind of this, I'm sure you probably saw last week there was a little show in San Francisco, Oracle Open World, and we seem to have this looming...
I heard the opening keynote sucked.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't be alone, but there's this kind of looming battle that's, I think of like Lord of the Rings, on the horizon. You see this smoke kind of coming, and we've got the Oracle databases and the HANA. What should customers, a lot of them, there's so many SAP customers that run Oracle database. So, what a customer, if they're thinking, all right, I want to start planning for this, maybe HANA is in my future, maybe not. What do you guys tell them? What do you talk to them about to get them ready?
So first, let me get it out front. What I really care about is people doing analytics well. I mean, honestly, that's whatever it takes to do that. And most of the time, to be honest, it's not the technology. It's a lot more about the culture and getting people to use information well. The technology is really only a small part of fixing good business analytics. So that said, clearly there's a revolution in the database business. It's going to affect everybody. SAP is now a player in the database and data warehousing market for pretty much the first time. There's been some offers before, but not really something that was used outside of the SAP world at all. At the highest, Oracle, good company, good databases. Most of our customers run their SAP systems and their analytics off Oracle databases. So I like to think that it's still going to be co-opetition. So even if at the PR level, you'll see dings from executives to each other. When it comes down to an individual customer, we both have a strong incentive to make sure the customer is successful, and we will continue to work with Oracle and Oracle databases. That said, in terms of long-term direction, I think Oracle, they've been in the database business a long time. They have to protect their installed base. HANA is a bigger vision than anything I've seen so far. It really is not just a database, it's certainly that, but it's a replacement for the underlying analytic platform. And I think we're going to do everything we can to make it the logical first choice for running SAP systems.
Okay. And you were the 8th employee at BusinessObjects.
20 years ago.
A little while ago.
I remember.
So you have obviously seen great change there. Do you guys see differences in between how companies that were pure SAP companies, that do not have business objects, and running the BW, versus those pure business objects who are not necessarily? Do you as a marketing person, as someone who tries to communicate messages effectively, do you consider them separate, or how do you go at them and try and? Because some have different needs.
So clearly the big change, one of the big changes in the industry over the last few years there's been very strong consolidation. Like most of the BI market was a bit of an aberration. For 10 years it stayed a market where there were lots and lots of players. BusinessObjects was the leader, but there was a good 5 or 6 other companies that were strong contenders. And that's relatively unusual in a market that has been around for 10, 15 years. But what happened in the last 5 years, there's been a very strong move to consolidation. Most of the larger vendors have been purchased by other companies. And if you look at the statistics now, every year the share of the top vendors keeps going up. So the smaller vendors are getting slowly but surely squeezed out. And why is that? It's because BI has no longer a separate silo. It's clearly becoming part of the overall corporate infrastructure. This is a great thing in terms of maturity, but it means it has to integrate better with your applications, with your security, with everything else you're doing. More lately, Enterprise 2.0, social collaboration platforms. So as that happens, it seems natural that it stops being the silo thing and starts being something that's part of your existing strategic vendors' infrastructure.
So you guys see that across your customer base, that there are some still very much siloed and some, but your vision is ultimately to bring it all together.
So people are definitely, everybody I think has that vision. Where you still see some of the vendors doing well is some of the areas where the corporate solutions have been a little bit too corporate. So this is sort of the self-enablement for business people, where today we have self-service business intelligence. I can do my reporting. I can get information I want from the corporate system. But if I want to do my own analytics on my own data, that's not necessarily something that's supported by my corporate system. So there's some smaller vendors that have done quite well in that. And it's, to be honest, it responds to a real business need. So our vision going forward is to have the best of both worlds, which is a standard corporate infrastructure, but be able to enable business users to upload their own data sets, do their own sort of self-service data marts, if you like. But without having to buy their own boxes, install something that SAP, that IT hasn't approved, separate security, higher total cost of ownership, and so on.
And don't forget about self-service BI. That means Excel. Some still have to.
So Excel is certainly not going away. It's part of the system.
Great. Well, thank you very much for stopping by.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. This guy's also on Twitter. Follow him, and he'll be speaking tomorrow at our Leadership 2.0 panel as well. Thank you, Timo.
Thank you.
Up next, Courtney's going to be doing an interview about confessions from a dashboard girl. So come back in about 20 minutes and see Courtney. Thank you.